to another episode of Church After Hours. This is a really special one. We have a brother that we go back with, cat we went to high school with, a good brother, and we're going to talk about education and about the schooling system, and also how history is reframed and reworked as we live in society today. So I'm going to introduce our good brother, our good friend, Professor Dr. David Childs. What's going on, my brother? How you doing, man?
Oh man, good to be here. I'm blessed, man. I'm still yet in the land of the living, man. I'm originally from Hamilton, Ohio, and we lost so many of our brothers, so many fallen soldiers, man. At least 8 to 10 of my childhood friends have been not just passed away, but murdered in those streets, man. So wow. I feel like I'm a survivor. I feel like I got to give back and pay it forward, man. I feel like I have a beautiful burden on my shoulders to give back while I'm still here, man. I'm one of the survivors, so just trying to do our part for God, you know.
For sure. Shout out to H-Town. We've had our brother Marco on here, who's from H-Town. Our brothers over who made y'all priest, brother Jimmy's from H-Town, man. Yeah. And talk about, but before we get into the formalities, man, I didn't realize you was from Hamilton until a few years ago because we met at Fairfield. How did you transition from Hamilton to Fairfield?
Yes, sir. Talk about Hamilton. Hamilton is one of those industrial cities that got passed over after the Industrial Revolution. We got passed over. It is on a revival right now, which is kind of cool, but it's more of a revival in the white community because still there's joblessness there in the black community, and the pie is not being shared with African Americans in terms of entrepreneurship, educational access, resources, grant money. Tends to only a few African Americans get to partake, but still we have major inequities in my hometown as it relates to dropout rates, access to education, jobs, being able to start a business. Those things are far and few between. We're trying to get the NAACP revived back there in Hamilton. But I was a street kid, man. I mean, I had, we were able to move out of Hamilton and go down to Fairfield, which was a little bit better. But wow, man, for a long time, I was one of the kids, street kids, and didn't have any access. We went to school I always say my favorite topic was lunch. My favorite subject was lunch. We went to school to eat. And so we had a good time, though. I mean, we had so much fun, and a lot of my childhood friends I went to school with are no longer with us, man. Killed by the violence of the streets. Some of them, a lot of them were good guys, and they just was in the wrong circumstances at the wrong time, man, and they didn't have opportunities. They felt like that was the only choice. It's never an excuse to hustle, but it's a lot easier when everybody's around you getting money and getting bankroll. I mean, I remember being 16, 17 years old, Cass was making a couple $1,000 a week, and it's like, when you don't have anything to eat, you can't even go to McDonald's, you can't even go to White Castle, you don't have access to a card to go to the mall, and you see somebody get money, that's what it was. But unfortunately, a lot of them passed away. So I always say I carry a lament, like a sense of sadness, because all of my brothers that have been killed in the streets, and the ones that weren't killed, as y'all know, locked up or drug addiction. So our heart is always with our community and trying to figure out ways to give back and do that. That's civil rights too. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
History is like on the ground. How are we going to provide resources and help and access to people? So that's my community. I got so much love for Hamilton. You was naming all my cats, Jimmy and Mark DeMarco, and so yeah, it's my people.
Yeah. Shout out to our brother Leroy Brown, who we interviewed too. I don't want to get him out. Our brother
Leroy, that's my guy. Yep,
doing great work together. Doing some great work.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump right into it, man. My first question to you, because I want to shape this conversation around folks trying to rewrite history. When I say folks, back in the day, we was like the man or that person. Our elected officials are the people that are trying to rewrite history and trying to say certain things happened that didn't happen. Talk to me about what's going on in the world of politics and how a lot of this information is being twisted and a different narrative is being pushed, and they're trying to push it to our kids and through the public school system.
Yes, right now, currently, there are more than 30 bills across the country targeting DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now they're talking about belonging too. I like that word. We've been adding the belonging piece, but they're targeting the funding, DEI funding, the practices and promotion at schools. As of June 19th, 6 states have been signed, and six laws have been signed into law. Bills have been signed into law by their governor. 2 in Florida, 1 in each of the Dakotas, 1 in Tennessee, and I think the other one in Texas, of course. And so it's an assault. And I heard a quote that I felt like was really profound. They said one of the most contested political spaces in the United States today is school boards.
Mm.
There are these think tanks out there, and I've encountered them where they're well funded, and they have these alt-right candidates that are trying to infiltrate the school boards and implement anti-CRT, so-called anti-CRT practices, anti-DEI. It's fear mongering. They feel like uh, diverse populations are getting special rights. African Americans are getting special rights, and it's really white supremacy because they feel that the correct curriculum, and I encounter this at my institution. The correct history is Eurocentric. So the most important history is learning about Abraham Lincoln, learning about George Washington, etc., and so forth. And that's good history too. And I'm a history teacher, and so I teach that as well. But it's intellectually dishonest to only present history from a Eurocentric perspective, especially in the United States, where we are the melting pot, but we're moving beyond the melting pot model. We're saying salad bowl, we're saying stew, because it celebrates diversity without saying that we all have to come together with a common Eurocentric American kind of culture.
Right.
But people are, it's dishonest to just teach the Civil War from a white perspective, and not bring in the contributions of Buffalo Soldiers and Native Americans. You can say the same thing with the Revolutionary War. It's so much that we need to learn, but there's been an assault and attack on this curriculum at different levels, and with the passage of certain bills all the way into this the state standards. They just revamped the Kentucky state standards to try to go at the DEI. They're trying to make it illegal even at the professor level now, where you can't talk about diversity. They're trying to close down departments of Black history, Black studies. I direct the Black studies program at Northern Kentucky University, and they're going after ethnic studies, women's studies, because it's a lack of understanding. It's a lack of understanding. They dismiss it as, oh, this is not real education, but it's a lack of understanding the depth and importance of diversity. So I'll just start there.
Yeah. Dr. Childs, I have 2 things. I'm always appalled when I hear about, like a term like CRT talked about, and it's not defined on the college level.
Right.
Because when I think about, my education at Fairfield and finished at Princeton and then went on to Ohio University, I didn't learn, some of the things that's included in CRT until I got to Ohio University.
Nice. Yeah.
So I'm, I hate in the media, and there's never a correction. Very, very few times there's a correction, that they're not talking about, high school and elementary school when they're talking about CRT. Because I mean, truly, I never learned that.
Right.
Secondly, I question, if it's a misunderstanding as far as them, taking these, the teachings out of the curriculum on the college and university level.
Right.
I think that, this is the information age, and there are so many things that people are learning these days collectively as well, and it's being discussed, and it's being accepted, that along with, I know that's a whole different subject, but along with Roe versus Wade, I truly just think it's good old white boys, you know, for lack of better words, just trying to get the country, you know, literally trying to live out that "Make America Great Again" as they see it. What are
Wow,
your
man,
thoughts on that?
yeah, you gave two really robust questions and thoughts that I think is the crux of the matter. I spent probably the last year and a half, it has tapered off, because I think they're regrouping, explaining critical race theory. And I want to say to the audience, a lot of my Ph.D. work, my doctoral work was on critical race theory. And I remember when I first heard the former president, 45, mention critical race theory. And I said to my wife, I said, he has no idea what that means. But critical race theory is a great word for racists in the radical right to begin to attack all things diversity, all things Black history. In a white supremacist world, with a white supremacist mindset, they're always looking for a red herring to prop themselves up and say, we're going to use critical race theory. This is attacking all that we are and our way of life. And we have to understand, when they say America, when they say the good old days, they mean the days when whiteness was privileged. I mean, it's still like that now, but it's more unapologetic back then. They want to harken back to a day where there were no Black CEOs, there were no Black presidents. And I want to say to the audience, I was the first African American in the history of my college to receive tenure, a tenure appointment, which is a lifetime appointment, because of a lot of these.
And not to cut your knowledge, but what year was this? Because that's crazy.
2017, 2018. And I'm not an old man yet, you know.
Congratulations, but
thank you. Yes. And you know what, Brother D-Lo? It was because of a lot of tenure, and my professors that are listening will know this. A lot of tenure in many institutions is based on student evaluations. So they promote you. You apply for 5 or 6 years. You get a portfolio together. And they look at your research and the scholarship, and a big part of it is based on student evaluations. And a lot of my student evaluations were racist. They were outright, the comments were racist. They were not used to an African American professor. They were not used to a Black person being in a position of authority and grading them. Because I'm in Kentucky. And a lot of them tell me I've never met a Black person in my life. And I've had a few refuse to learn from me. But by the end of the semester, they realize that I'm grading your papers and you need to get your act together. I had somebody take my class 2 or 3 times before they could humble themselves and learn from a Black man. So those were the things that all of the people before me, all of the African Americans that came before me, and basically persons of color, they came up against that and did not get tenure. And so it's institutional racism. That's what we mean by institutional racism and systemic racism. And so to your question, my brother, so I began to explain critical race theory. Critical race theory is a complex philosophical framework that essentially looks at how racism is intrinsic in a lot of our laws and in our systems, in our school systems. CRT, as it relates to education, looks at how the school is set up to disadvantage people of color and give an advantage to white folks in terms of the language. I should say middle class white folks, because white folks suffer in it too.
They like us a lot of times.
Right, exactly. That's why,
and that's my point. So a lot of those people are starting to care about, you know, the things and the way we've been treated, and that's what they don't like.
Right. And 45 duped the poor whites because his policies does not benefit them. And so it gets to your second point, my brother. I agree with you that it is intentional. Okay, but when I say they don't understand it, these people are not sophisticated enough to understand. They're lazy. They're intellectual. They don't want to read about critical race theory because they don't have to. They have privilege. We have, in some of these school districts, you'll have a person with barely any degrees running the whole school system because of who they know. Superintendent, principals. I see it all the time. And the sisters come in with more. I know a district where the sisters got more degrees by far than the superintendent, and they won't promote her. That's systemic racism, and they know each other. They'll put their they'll put their wife in the position of assistant superintendent and these kinds of things. And so this is what critical race theory looks at, how racism is inherent, especially in the law. That's where it started out as, and y'all know this legal theory. It started out as legal theory and looking at how, for example, redlining, redlining laws cause African Americans not to be homeowners. Yes, and not being able to be admitted into certain colleges. In Kentucky, we couldn't go. A lot of blacks in my own state where I teach, we couldn't get into a lot of the colleges. And so CRT looks at that and said this is not an equal playing field. And so I think we're in a world where people, well, first of all, it's anti-intellectual. And I do want to talk about Dr. Claudine Gay out of Harvard. The woman that was asked to the president that had to step down, intimidated by people like yourselves, by brothers that are intellectual and understand things. This is a climate of anti-intellectualism, and it's taking momentum. And we're in the election season, so we're gonna see some really brutal stuff. But we got to stand up and speak out, even if our voice shakes. We have to speak the truth, even if our voice shakes.
Yes. Before you go, I just want to add one thing. Yes. Miss Claudine Gay did have to step down as president, but she is still tenured,
right?
Still making big money up there. So let's make sure we let the folks know, because a lot of times the media, just makes you think like she's been wiped out. This lady is still doing great work.
Exactly, and without going into details, but they tried to do that to me. They tried to do that to me. They ain't want me to get it. I'm just gonna put it like that. I knew exactly what she went through. I wasn't on that stage at Harvard, but I went through some of the same thing.
So that was a lived experience from you, just on a different playing field.
Oh my goodness! People tried to say I falsified information, and the audience can look up. I've done over 200 articles out there. You could basically, humbly speaking, you can Google Dr. David Child's Black History. You can see all of the stuff that I've done. You can look at the research. You can look at who I cited, but still, people had something to say, because at the end of the day, systemic racism looks like this. You can have a qualified person, but we're going to try to figure out a way to make them not look qualified. I see it all the time. People are intimidated by a black person that knows something. Not everybody. There's a lot of good white allies out there, but there's some people in power. There's think tanks out there that are trying to systemically keep us out of office, keep us from being in high level positions. And that's what's going on. And some people are stone racists, like our former president and all of his cronies. They just don't like people of color. They don't. And it intimidates them, and they're uncomfortable.
And when I look at CRT, critical race theory, and like making it plain or just being outright honest and open, and people get mad when I say this, but at the end of the day, it's basically us taking the mirror and putting it back in America's face. It's American history. You know what I'm saying? Like when we talk about Dr. King and we talk about Medgar Evers and all of these figures that fought for us on so many levels. So you're saying us teaching a part of your history that you don't like, you know what I'm saying, for us to talk about, now that's a problem. Like talk to the systemic foolishness that we have to go through when we're just basically giving a part of our history, which is in all American history as well.
Right. Black history is American history.
Right.
Native American history is American history.
Absolutely.
Is American history. And a white supremacist curriculum says that the real history is Abraham Lincoln and as I said earlier, George Washington, and that if you're looking at anything else, it's an anomaly and it's extra. But in reality, all of this history happened right alongside one another.
Absolutely.
Even in the Revolutionary War, Crispus Attucks was the first casualty in the Revolutionary War. The Native American people fought on both sides of the Civil War.
Yeah.
You can go through every war and see how it's integral, how our particularly African Americans' existence was integral to the history. Enslavement, going all the way back from really the 1500s all the way to the end of the Civil War, was a thread throughout all of the wars. And CRT looks at that as well, how enslavement is connected to capitalism and the free market. And so the wealth of the U.S. This is our history. History is,
Yeah.
I'm trained as a historian. So history is the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's one thing
Yes.
I learned as well. Just like when I'm a pastor, but just like when I read the Bible's got good stuff, it got bad stuff, and it got ugly stuff, so you got to look at all of it.
Right.
And so one of the things about our wealth today, I teach in a slave state. A lot of the millionaires, because you look at some of the streets, it's named after wealthy people, wealthy families. A lot of it is slave money.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And many times enslavers would own property in the free state, and had enslaved people in Kentucky, Tennessee, and so it's much more complex than we realize. And a lot of wealth we see today, even in some of our institutions, even some of the colleges we know, University of Kentucky, was backed by slave wealth that they gained from the backs of enslaved black men and women. And that's the reality. That's the history we should be learning. And it's not.
It's just the truth. It's an ugly truth, but it's the truth.
Right. And it's not. And it's not just for black people. That's what one of the messages. Karen Parsons and I, when we travel and have conversations with people, when we do workshops, her organization is called Sweet Blackberry, and I'm a board member of it. And this is what we do. We one of the things we say is, stop thinking Black history is just for Black people. It's ridiculous. Right. We're all Americans. If y'all want to make America great again for real, this is what Colin Kaepernick was saying. He was saying this is America too. I just want to have a conversation about the police department killing Black men. If y'all say y'all want to be patriots, let's be really patriotic and talk about what our country is doing so everybody can be free and equal. So we can really be land of the free, home of the brave. Let's have a real conversation. And so Martin Luther King is not just for Black people, and white people are not doing us a favor by coming to the Martin Luther King services. It's a part of your history too. When we go, Black History Month is coming up. I'm glad we're doing this, brothers. On January 22nd, we're getting ready for Black History Month. Sure. And Black History's programs, it's not just for Black people. No, all of us should be at the table having these conversations. Yeah. And so I like to talk about the broader conversations of Black history. W.E.B. Du Bois and his Souls of Black Folks talked about a double consciousness and how we African Americans have a second sight. We have a two-ness. So we can be. He used scripture. He said we're in the world, but we're not of it. That's and right. So I think we have a insight that we can speak. We can be philosophers or prophets to America. And when Cornel West talked about prophetic pragmatism, when he used the word prophecy, he talked about not just seeing the future, but to look past, like Sankofa, look to the past, look to the present, look to the future.
Still moving forward.
Moving forward. And I think African Americans are in a unique position today to speak to our white brothers and sisters and say, it doesn't mean we're better than anybody, but I think because of our history of our suffering, and James Cone, my favorite text by him is The Cross and the Lynching Tree. And he talked about the suffering that African Americans went through to help us have a better insight into and he connected to the life of Christ, that they were like Christ because they suffered, but that suffering allows us to be able to speak truth to power. And I think sometimes our white brothers and sisters need to take a step back and listen, and not explain things to us, and not explain how they think we should feel, and we shouldn't be complaining, we should be grateful. Let people talk, and it's gonna be uncomfortable, it's gonna be unpopular, but it needs to be said. So
yeah. And before you go, Kurt, since we're dealing with racism, I want to talk about the statements, because it was laughable that Nikki Haley made that America has never been, and still isn't, a racist country, or our society isn't racist. Talk about that, man. And when you heard that, this is a person that's running for president and who has a real following. Like, when I heard that, it was like the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. Speak about those statements that she made.
Well, there's a narrative out there. I teach a class called Racism and Sexism in Society. And there are two different narratives going on, at least two different. And I quoted Du Bois earlier. Du Bois talked about two Americas. And there's a population out there that's not privy. First of all, they don't have the lived experience that we have had. I remember, ironically, y'all brought up Karen Parsons last year, brothers. When she came to Kentucky, I was on my way to the university to pick, or to the hotel to pick her up and take her to the university, and I got pulled over by the police. They ran my tags wrong. I was dressed like this, but even better, I had a tie on and everything. They ran my tags wrong, and the number they put in was, at least this is what they said. The number they put in was the license plate of a person that had 3 or 4 warrants, and they had evaded the police, and they had run from the police. And so when he pulled me over, first of all, he followed me for a minute. And when he pulled me over, he had his hand on his holster, and he was yelling. He didn't even come up to the car. He was standing back. Put your hand on the dashboard. Yelling at me. And I was shaking because I was like, I had seen all of the clips and read all the stories. This is my moment. Let me stay calm. And that I had to de-escalate that officer. Talk about racism. He saw a black man. He thought, we really got one here. He said he ran the plates wrong. I didn't believe him. I had to de-escalate him and say, I'm actually a professor. I'm a pastor, actually. And he almost shot me. He had his hand on his gun. And so I tell people my lived experiences. I could sit here, you and I, us three can probably trade stories of the racism that we've experienced. A lot of times my students will say, I've never experienced racism, so therefore it does not exist. That's a very selfish perspective. A lot of times it's perspective. Then it's going back to a misunderstanding of systemic racism. Just because one is not experiencing racism every day does not speak to the system of racism, the racist system. I may not walk out of the door and experience a Klansman, but what about all of the people in the president of the United States that have never been president because of the color of their skin? It's easy to count one. We had one president, one black president. And I just told everybody I was the first to get tenure in the College of Education there. And so systemic racism is broader than the individual. A lot of people are defining racism like, well, I hear black people say this, I've never experienced racism before. I think it's changed. Well, you probably live in the suburbs. You may not experience that type of racism. Whereas a brother in the hood, when we was in the hood, man, the police chase you and they will pull you over for nothing just by standing next to somebody. You know what I mean? Right. And so it's a lot of times people like Haley, they're just out of touch. They're out of touch, and they and it becomes a political talking point. They'll point to people like Oprah, and they'll point to clowns like, well, I shouldn't. I'm about to get y'all in trouble. I ain't gonna say it.
Nah, speak your truth.
They point to clowns like Tyler Perry.
Yeah, for sure.
And Flavor Flav and say, look, they made it. Yep. But they don't look at people in the Pookie, Tookie, and Ray Ray that can't find a job. Or they shut out of the system because they got a felony on trumped up charges. They don't look at the swath of our people, black, brown, Hispanic, you name it, that can't find jobs, that can't even get into college, can't find a trade. They don't point to we have one of the highest child poverty rates in Cincinnati. They don't point, that's racism. But they're looking at it as, well, there's no more cross burnings every day, although they do exist. They out there, but they have a different. It's two Americas. So that's what I usually tell people in terms of Nikki Haley.
Yeah. I definitely think that what she was doing was trying to blow that whistle. She was trying to blow that whistle and trying to get some of Trump's voters and let them know, hey, I could be just as vulgar, even though I am a woman of color. On her birth certificate, everything after that doesn't seem like that's something that she actually believes. But back to the I don't want to be lost or let our viewers not hear the echo of, and I know my brother D is a big proponent of teaching your kids yourself.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's something that I don't hear enough is
Mm.
that, you know, we should be teaching our kids,
I love that,
you know,
Kurt.
our history, you know, and I don't even college and the university is one thing when somebody's mature enough to, you know, understand or intelligently or, you know, reject for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But I totally just think that we need to equip our kids with our history so when they go out into the world, they know what to expect.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a big proponent of that. We were talking about CRT earlier. Gloria Ladson Billings, her work deals with critical race theory in schooling, and she's critical of the school system. She says it's rooted in white supremacy, and I want the audience to understand when we say white supremacy, automatically people might think like the KKK, the neo Nazis, like overt racism, but what we mean white supremacy is that whiteness is privileged, like the way standard English is privileged, the way of life of whiteness, white superiority, whites better than blacks. That's what we mean by that. And so when you're in the school system, when you're a first grader, so for example, some school districts there are no black teachers. In fact, my wife, the school district that she's at, she's the only black teacher in her whole school. In the school is like 75% African American, and she's the only black teacher. And somebody might say, well, a good teacher is a good teacher, but there's so much research that talks about the importance of representation. So much research out there that says that, yes, you can have good white teachers, but it's even better if you have teachers that can understand you, that even look like you. Because what message does it send when we have role models we don't have any role models that look like us? So I'm a big proponent of teaching at home. My kids are homeschooled as they want to. You know, I allow them to choose. But I've always taught my children, and I got a lot of my education honestly through the church. And my mother taught me Black history. So there's this expanded curriculum. So I did go to the public schools, but I had more than supplemental education. We were getting the Afrocentric experience. Asante talks about that. The Afrocentric experience, Black consciousness, understanding. What does it mean? Understanding who we are and valuing who we are. It's not. I want to be clear. It's not about Black supremacy. It's not about Black is good and white is bad, like the old Malcolm. Because when Malcolm X transitioned, he began to be more open and have a more multicultural conversation. But it's about coming back to understanding who we are. James Brown, he did a lot of work in Cincinnati. A lot of his recordings, King Records, right? And one of the things he produced was "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud." And that's what we're saying. Like, you know, being a person of color shouldn't be this bad thing. And sometimes we have to teach our students that. We talked a lot about the doll test last week. How they use the test. They show the black doll and they show the white doll. They say which one is smart. The black kids say the white doll. Which one is beautiful? The black kids say the white doll. Which one is ugly? The black kids, even now when they do this test, they say the black doll is ugly. The black doll is not smart. The black doll is not innovative. They're not insightful. And so that's that self-hatred. And so educating our students at home, our children at home, and supplementing that is huge. It's huge. I had a lot of racist teachers. And when I moved to Fairfield,
we all did.
Yeah. And it just was a shame. And to be honest, I had to undo a lot of that through my mother and through what I was reading and valuing things that we've done as being great, as opposed to always looking at something that's Eurocentric to be bad. And so I can't talk about that topic enough, you all, in terms of educating our own.
Yeah, that's important stuff. And D, you know, I have to just interject the fact that I left Fairfield, you know, because and transferred to Princeton because of a lot of things that happened there. I'm not going to go into that, but I do want to go into a situation that my son went through his senior year over at Dixie Heights High School over in Kentucky. Now, he ended up getting an F for the class, and because he received the F on the final, and I called and kept asking, I'm talking about this literally took about a week. And when we got down to it, the final in the class in the theater was cleaning up. Cleaning up was, I think, 50% of your grade.
Wow.
After it was nuts. Come to find out, the teacher was a homosexual white guy. And, he just had a vendetta for my son. Him being an athlete and, him, being a masculine young man because he had a father in the house. It was incredible. The digging I had to do. And it took so long for them to tell me what the actual final was.
Wow.
And so I tell that story to, just remind our guests, sometimes you have to listen to your kids. Don't always take what the principal, what the teacher said and run with it. Do some digging and stay on top of what's going on with those kids.
And before you interject, David, I want to say this because I love this brother. I know he's polarized, and a lot of people don't love the minister, but I love Minister Farrakhan. Growing up in Chicago before I moved to Ohio, he always had a saying: when we send our kids to these schools, the first thing we need to do when they get in the door, before they take off their school clothes, they need to be debriefed. You know what I'm saying? They need a debriefing, and we need to talk to them about everything that they learned in school that day to make sure that it's exact and it's correct. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Having conversations with our children about how teachers
it would have flew under the radar. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Having conversations like Kurt had with his son about what happened in this class with this particular teacher, so we can all be on the same page. And as great as your resume reads, man, the tenure, doctor, professor, a father, a husband. To me, the greatest thing is the fact that you're teaching your children homeschool and you're taking their education in your own hands and not dependent on anybody else to do that. And I tell parents all the time, not everybody can homeschool. So myself, brothers like Professor Cash in Ohio, we created Saturday school programming where we can give those options to parents that can't do homeschooling. So I always say the school system is the school system. Right. But the fact that child is your child, God gave you that child, and you're supposed to get them to where they need to be in life. It's your responsibility to make sure they get the things that they need to be successful and to reach their highest heights. So shout out to both of you brothers, man. The fact that you're homeschooling your children and the fact that you listened to your child, you went and fought for him at that level. Because a lot of times parents just take whatever the teachers and administration say for face value. I see it every day in my line of work, and I tell parents all the time, teachers lie too. You know what I'm saying? So salute. I just had to say that.
Y'all brothers broached some deep topics just now, and I'm gonna go there.
He must have a story.
Let's go.
I'm gonna go there, brother. So first of all, I want to say this. I'm gonna try to address three different things in one. College is not always the pathway. I meant to say this earlier. There's a lot of trades out there. There's a lot of room for trades. There's Howard Gardner talks about multiple intelligences, and a lot of my research is around epistemology, like different ways of knowing. And there's like an Afrocentric epistemology, and we often privilege a Eurocentric way of knowing. And the way Europeans have historically measured intelligence has been through memorization and like rationality, like mathematics. But Howard Gardner says argues there's way more broad ways of knowing, and music, and a lot of things that Blacks we celebrate in our culture, African American, Latino, is musical, is artistic. So there are broader ways of being intelligent, and the school systems don't always measure that. And so there are there's multiple intelligences outside of just going to college. I really advocate that. There's trades, carpentry. My brother is a genius. He started out with electronics, but my dad had taught us to do drywall and carpentry. And so he left his electronic career. The brother can build computers, but he left his electronic career and he running a lucrative business with construction. And so most broader ways of looking at things. So I want to say that first. That's my first point. Secondly, and I want to preface this. I'm not bragging. I'm trying to be humble as possible.
Brother, speak your truth.
My children, my daughter finished her college degree because we homeschooled. She finished her college degree before she graduated from high school. Wow.
Hey man, run that back, man. Say that again, brother. That's a flex, but that's a good flex. We need to hear that.
My daughter, we homeschooled her. And she finished college, her first college degree, I should say. They announced her college degree at her high school diploma, at her high school graduation. She finished her degree before she finished high school. So, and now she
the obvious question is, are they holding our kids back? That's what pops in.
Yes, they, of course. When I'm getting kicked out, I got the textbook story of getting put out of class for nothing. I was always a good kid. D-Lo, no, I wasn't no trouble.
You was. I was more rambunctious than you was.
And they would kick me out of class for stuff, opening the window, just racist. I had racist teachers. So many times they do hold you back, and they wanted me to play basketball. I could hoop a little bit. I was good at track. I like track better than. I like basketball way better than track. I was good at track, but I really didn't like track. But I love basketball, but I wasn't as good as I was in track. But that's what it would be okay if I was an athlete, which no knock to the athlete, no cap on the athletes. It would be okay if I was doing something else, but not being an intellectual, not be good at school. And so a lot of times there's a lot of research out there in terms of how they perceive intelligence among Black people, among Hispanics, among people of color. A lack of intelligence. They perceive us as having a lack of intelligence. And so it does hold us back. My daughter is in her early 20s, and she's already in her master's program. The one that graduated early, she's working on her master's. My other daughter is a valedictorian of the whole school. She went back to high school, and just were way ahead because of homeschooling. So anyway, my son did the same thing.
Was that her own choice, or?
Yeah. Because my son tried high school and he didn't like it, and he said, "Dad, I'm coming back home." And he did the same thing. He got his degree early, and he at NKU now, finishing his bachelor's out, and he barely 20. So I let them choose, what they want to do. My daughter decided to go back to high school. My middle daughter decided to go back to high school, and I'm seeing the results of just having them at home. In fact, I'm pulling I got a middle school daughter that was going to middle school, and she's not doing well at all. Even just like ways of knowing and learning how the school system is set up and I work in the College of Education, and I observe, I'm in schools all the time, but even just the way we teach our students is problematic. People learn on different rhithms.
Right. Especially our kids.
Yeah. And then the third piece I want to say is highly controversial. Kimberly Crenshaw talks about intersectionality. She talks about this idea that we have multiple identities. Black, white, or it could be Black, poor, and heterosexual. One of the things I've encountered is most of the racism that I've experienced has been the worst racism has been from gay white males. And I'm saying this as not a knock to that community, but it's not the same. A lot of now some of the allies, and I'm a Christian, and some of the allies have been gay allies, but I let it be known that white privilege is white privilege. Regardless, because a lot of the racism that was perpetuated against me have been white males, and they felt like, oh, well, I'm just as oppressed as you. And they overlooked some of the racism that I experienced. And so I wanted to say that. I wanted to put that out there. And we got allies on different points, and but a lot of the race it's troubling because you have to unpack that.
Right.
Because you don't get a pass to be a racist because you're from the LGBT community. That's what
Yeah.
you don't get a racist pass And I would challenge anybody on that. I will argue with you about that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're from that community. That's what Dave Chappelle was saying. He got a lot of trouble for that.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's something that a lot of them hide behind. You know, it's all of a sudden they play the victim once they done threw a stone. So I totally agree and hear what you're saying.
And if you study their movement, if you look at Stonewall and look at that, it was racism inside of that as well. Like the black gays experiencing racism within their own community. So if they can be racist against their own, of course they can be racist against a brother like you or I. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. So, it just, in my lived experience, that's where I've experienced some of the worst racism. That's when I've had my colleagues of that persuasion tell me to don't expect special privileges because you black. I've had other professors tell me that from that community. And I said, excuse me. And he apologized. I said, nope, you already said it. I know what you think.
Right.
Now
that's
I see
who you are.
And the funny thing, and so many comebacks came into my mind that would probably get you fired immediately. But yeah, that's crazy. Wow. Wow.
Right. Before we wrap up, man, because we're approaching an hour. You talked about Karen Parsons a little bit, but I want you to kind of go a little bit in depth about the importance of representation in child literacy and the work that you guys are doing, going on this tour, going to different cities and different states and different schools. Talk about the importance of representation in as it pertains to child literacy.
Yes, I'm glad you said that, and I do want to privilege Karen Parsons' work. Like a lot of us, like a lot of y'all intelligent brothers and sisters, people are multifaceted. A lot of times you can see like a professional athlete, like Muhammad Ali. People don't know he was an artist. If you go to the Ali Center in Louisville, he used to draw.
Yes.
A lot of gifted people like Karen Parsons are very talented, but sometimes they're pigeonholed because of what they do. She's been typecast as Hillary, but actually she's brilliant. And I hope I'm gonna make sure she has a chance to listen to y'all podcast and everything. She's formed a company called Sweet Blackberry, and she said she always wrote. She was always a writer.
Wow.
And she didn't completely leave the acting world, but she's doing like making animated films now for African American history films for children. And we doing her and I are doing cooking up some stuff on Black cowboys. So she's got these films out already for children that teach Black history. Like she did something on Garrett Morgan, the man that invented the traffic light.
Yeah, the gas mask. He the elevator to go to multiple floors. You know, that's
you got it. She did she did a film on that, a short film for children.
Is that out?
Yes, out already.
Okay.
It's called Garrett's Gift, and it's out already. It was on Netflix. It was on Amazon, I think. And then she's done a number of books. I used some of the books at Northern Kentucky University. She's done a couple of novels. One is called How High the Moon. It takes place during the Civil Rights Movement, and it highlights Steiny, the young man that was actually the youngest, George Steiny, the youngest person that was executed in the electric chair at 14 years old.
Oh yeah, it was. I think he was in South Carolina, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, he could. His arms couldn't even fit. I seen that. Yeah. Powerful.
And she writes about that. About that in the book. So we use that. It's called How High the Moon, and the whole idea is to teach a broader American history, to tell stories that people would not otherwise know. And so that's what we've been doing. Representation, having books that show us in the books where the protagonist is a Black male or a Black female or Hispanic female. That's what we're trying to do. And we've been, we just finished it's sort of a speaking tour. We didn't plan it to be a tour, but it ended up, we spoke at 6 different places all over the Kentucky, Ohio. We were as far as Louisville. And then we spoke at Cincinnati Public. In the summer, we're trying to do we got some broader stuff. We're probably going to do we're looking at the Children's Museum in Indianapolis. We may be in Boston. And so it's kind of taking off.
If y'all want to come this way to Columbus, let me know. I can set it up for sure.
Okay. For sure. Let's talk about that. And the company is called Sweet Blackberry. I serve on their board. There's about 4 of us. It's a small board. And it's a lot of work to do, as y'all can see. We're getting into curriculum work. We did a workshop with the school board. We had superintendents in the audience. The president of the school board was there from Newport. And so we really trying to make a dent. My whole goal, brothers, is I'm a survivor. I started saying this. Now, I like that I remembered to say this. I'm a survivor. I had friends that were killed way too young. My cousin Frenchman was killed when he was, I think, 27. One of my very best friends, Broderick McGee, was murdered on the streets of Hamilton. He was barely 30. CJ Calvin Simmons, I like to call their names out, was killed. I have so many friends. And so I have an obligation to pay it forward. There's a scripture that talked about Christ. He poured out his soul unto death. I feel like all of us have something God put in us that's we pouring out to the world. We're supposed to pour out to the world. Everybody don't get to do that. And then when we're done pouring out, it's our time to go. And so I have a little burden because my dad was a pastor, and he was gone too soon. The hardest thing I had to do was give his eulogy. Packed out. He was a great man. The whole church had about 300-400 people in there, and I had the honor and privilege to give his eulogy. And I have a sense. I tell this to people. I have a burden. Sometimes it feels like a physical burden to give back and to pour out and to speak truth to power and to keep going until my time is up. That's what I do, to give back and help as many people as I can. The Lord He blesses us with resources so that we can be a blessing and help other people. So I really appreciate y'all having me on the show because it allowed me to do more of that. Hopefully I said something to help somebody.
There's so much there.
Yeah.
The thing that sticks out the most to me is that, that you guys aren't waiting for someone else to teach these kids. You guys are putting out books and novels and cartoons, to give these kids some history. That's beautiful. I think so many times, people like D.L. Hewley get on the radio, and no knock to him.
Right.
He's not the only one, but they say these things. Can you believe that? Can you believe this? But there's nothing proactive that's happening to help themselves. So I love that's what y'all doing. And that's the main thing. I also, you said a couple different times, but you said multi-intelligence. Is that the word you use?
Multiple intelligence.
Multiple intelligences.
Man, it's Howard Gardner's work. He's an educational psychologist. That work was revolutionary for me because it looks at, like, take Michael Jordan, one of my favorite. He is the GOAT. I like LeBron, but he's the GOAT. I know. But Michael Jordan, and we could talk about Michael Jackson. Michael Jordan was a genius. His basketball IQ. He had a type of intelligence and a genius on the court. He could do other in that, and we know he's an entrepreneur as well. Sure. Michael Jackson was brilliant. He may not have been able to do mathematical equations. He probably could have, but he was a genius. So genius at music. He just was a walking machine. And so it's a broader measure of intelligence. The old notion of IQ is kind of outdated. It's really a Eurocentric way of measuring.
Oh, it's always been that way.
And there's a book. There's a book that's out. It's an old book it's hard to find it in print. It's all about. I'm gonna tell you the title right now. Let me get this title: Race and Intelligence: The Fallacies Behind the Race IQ Controversy.
Wow.
And it's by Ken Richardson. It's an old book from the 70s and 80s. Race and Intelligence: The Fallacies Behind the Race IQ Controversy. And it shows how measures of IQ is rooted in racism. And Howard Gardner just broadens that and says, you may not be good at mathematics, but you can be a brilliant pitcher. You can be a brilliant poet. I was always told I wasn't smart. I had guidance counselors telling me I wasn't college material. Here I am teaching college with tenure. And by the time I finished my sophomore year, I had 4.0. But my counselors told me I wasn't good at school. That's racism. And I wrote a novel. My novel was called
Systematic
Home, historical fiction. It's a historical fiction book called Escaping from Home. I was told I couldn't do that. And so Howard Gardner just says we're way more complex than we ever realized.
Wow. Good old Fairfield telling brothers that they wasn't good
Mm.
enough, and here we are, man.
D, you remember the book that we talked about last episode, The Mental Race,
Yep.
by
Yep. The book we read
Robert
together.
Wall Sussman? They spoke about in that book. He broke down what the IQ test was.
Right.
Yeah.
In
Right.
like I think it was like had to be like the 20s or the 30s, and it was just a popularity contest.
That's all it was.
Right.
That's all it was.
Oh man.
That's why when we teach, like we started doing ACT prep and SAT prep, and my son teaches the class now, him and his friend. We let parents know our kids aren't inadequate to do well on these tests. One, the test is racially and culturally biased. Let's just be honest in that regard. But two, if they study it and prepare, that way when they sit down and have an opportunity to go over the information, when they go and take the test, they'll be that much more comfortable. So our children can do above and exceeding anything that we can put in front of them. We just have to do our part as parents to equip them with the right information to be successful. Because we know the test is racially and socially and culturally biased, right? So what we do, we put them in front of the information earlier. That way, when they take it, they knock it out the park. And we're seeing children do well in our program and other things that we've done like that. And salute to you and the good work you do. And I would love, like I said, to get Sister Karen up here because we need those type of programs. You know, and I think it's important that she does this because during the tour that you guys was on, I was seeing your post. I was like, this sister is so brilliant just watching clips. But when you watch the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, they would have you believe she was dumb, she was ignorant, she wasn't smart. And some adults really think that's how she is. Like people can't separate the acting from the actor. You know what I'm saying? So to see her being an advocate for education and being creative with getting this information to our children, I think is just genius on so many levels. So people need to hear that sister speak, and the work that you guys are doing is so important, man, for real.
Yes, sir, man. This is amazing. I appreciate y'all, brothers, man.
We didn't really hit on you being a pastor, though.
Yeah, we can close. We can close with that.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. A lot of my work intersects. A lot of my pastoral work, because my second doctorate is in theology.
And you got that from Harvard, right?
I have a certificate from Harvard.
Okay.
And theology as well. Harvard Divinity School, which was really it shaped a lot of my education and how I think about things. It was really, really a progressive program. I really liked it. And a lot of my research is around Black studies and Black theology. My doctoral dissertation was on theology of the Black church, an Afrocentric kind of Christianity that Roboto talks about and James Cone talks about. And to be quite frank, my writing talks about much of Christianity is rooted in white supremacy. And Absolutely. So a lot of my work unpacks that and looks at a more liberatory Christianity that James Cone talks about. So in other words, the authentic Black experience in the church does not have a theology apart from liberation. Our theology has to deal with brothers that have a felony and can't find work. So what are ways the church experience has to find ways to empower him? Church experience has to have ways to empower, to educate. And so I've evolved to the place where my pastoral ministry is often one and the same as my intellectual discourse. In fact, a small group of we have a documentary coming out in August. Talk about, multiple intelligences and I always tell people to be multifaceted. Don't pigeonhole yourself. We could do a lot of things. They told me I couldn't do it, and I'm stubborn. I was a fighter. I did used to fight at Fairfield, but and I said, okay, you tell me I can't do it. We're gonna do everything. My dad was the same way. And the documentary deals with the historic Black church. There's a historic Black church that has roots to the Underground Railroad in Augusta, Kentucky, that we're reviving and restoring into a cultural arts center. And the documentary is going to talk about the Underground Railroad and that part of the Kentucky and things like that. But our church is First Antioch Baptist Church, the historic Antioch Baptist Church, continually Black pastors going all the way back to the 1880s. And a lot of before that connections to the Underground Railroad. It's a sacred space. It's Black owned. We own the building. We don't have a mortgage on it. on the property there. I talk about Black economics as well, owning our own stuff. Again, it's not that we're better than anybody, but it's just time we had our stuff and our own.
That's right.
So we have a nonprofit that's a part of it, a 501c3, where we do a lot of, we give groceries out every week. We've done job training. We do community meals. Everything is free. And we have a multicultural arts program. And I took Karen Parsons over there. She was able to see the space. We have Black art throughout the space. I mean, we have a Black Lord's Supper, a painting of a Black Lord's Supper. Because I paint. Remember, I used to paint
Yeah.
I still do that. And I did a mural of the Black Lord's Supper. And so that's my calling. And my wife is a classical pianist, so she's our minister of music.
Wow.
And my wife is from Hamilton. She taught herself multiple languages. So we just all about what we're talking about today, brothers. We try to live it out. And to whom much is given, much is required.
It's required.
Yeah, we're in Walnut Hills, First Antioch Baptist Church. Come see us at 12:30. We shifted to 12:30 after the pandemic. We used to meet at like 9:30, and then we started coming later, and we got stuck there. Black folks ain't gonna go back to 9:30, but I should have said that out loud. But thank you for asking that. That's who I am. That embodies me. I'm going to go ahead and put this out here. I got into some trouble when I was a youth. When I spent some time homeless. I was affiliated with gangs, and I had a dramatic conversion experience. I really did. Got caught up in the wrong crowd after I graduated from high school, and was out there with my friends and cousins and being influenced in the wrong way. And like I said, a lot of those guys got killed out there. And the Lord, I'm a survivor. That's what I mean by that too. I should have been dead. I mean, I was with people that, a month later they was killed, or a couple of weeks later they were killed. And if I had been in the car, that kind of thing. And so through that, I had just a dramatic experience with God. And so I just been running ever since, man. I got a sense of urgency. And so I do thank y'all for this platform, man. Y'all doing the work. Thank you.
Man, that brother is a professor, a doctor, and he is, teaching the word of God. And some of y'all just in there being a pastor, making money off them people. This brother is amazing.
Right. Painter, an artist, and a whole nine. Yo, I totally forgot about your artwork. I remember that. That's
how I started.
Ooh, that's beautiful.
We got to get a picture of that. We got to get a picture of that. Put it up here for the people to see that Last Supper.
It's dope that you still tapped in and you still expressing yourself in that way artistically. That's beautiful, brother. For real. And any closing remarks, man? We yield the floor to you. Any closing remarks before we get out of here, man?
I just want to say I don't take a salary, man. When I started working for how do you say Kareem? Is it Kareem?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. It's been a while since I seen my friends here. Kareem mentioned about there's a lot of pastors out there that give the ministry a bad name. When I first started, I've been there about 10 years. When I first started there, I didn't take a salary. I don't take a salary. Everything we do, we give back to the community. All of the funds we raise go right back to the community. We do want to provide a resource where we can give jobs. We do employ some people there from the community. That's a part of our ministry too. We want to just give back. And so we want to be in a place where we can have a fully functional organization where we can employ people full time from the community. We've already started doing that part time, and where if they need somewhere to work, they can come to First Antioch Ministries and have employment. And so that's our vision. I forego a salary, and so I want to say this: we from my neighborhood. And others can relate to this. It helps you realize how brief time can be. I hope that I get an opportunity to live till 80, 90 years old. My grandfather was, I think, in his 90s. So I hope that, I have those genetics. But every day is a blessing. And every day is an opportunity to give back to somebody else. It's more blessed to give than receive.
That's right.
And I'll try my hardest to live that out for those that have gone before me, those that didn't get the opportunity to speak the truth. Sometimes we're going to be afraid to speak the truth. Sometimes, it's going to be advantageous to say what people want us to hear, but God wants us to always speak the truth because it's liberating, it empowers people.
That's
and
right.
So again, from the bottom of my heart, this is an amazing show. Y'all keep doing what y'all doing. God bless y'all, brothers.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you, pastor. Thank you, professor. Thank you, father. Thank you, artists. The fact that you are living out the things that you talk about and you teach is beautiful because you're all those things that I just said. So thank you, my brother, and continue success. Keep teaching our children. Keep teaching these young children in college that you're working with that have never seen a representation of us like that. And we wish you nothing but the best. And we'll be definitely working and get some stuff done together on the ground level here in Cincinnati for sure.
For sure. Yeah. Thank y'all, brothers. Thanks for having me, for real.
Yes, thanks for the information. Thanks for the information you just gave to the people.
So hopefully y'all wrote down these book recommendations. I got a long list of stuff that I was writing down, taking notes. So hopefully y'all was picking up what that brother was dropping down.
Absolutely.
So it's been another edition and episode of Church After Hours. We'll see y'all next week. Peace and blessings.
Peace.
All right, brothers.